Oh.
Did you ring, Professor?
Tarleton, I did. In fact, I have been ringing for several minutes.
I'm sorry, sir. I didn't hear the bell.
Oh, how distressing. Premature deafness and in one so young. Kindly pick up my book.
Your book, sir?
Yes, it has fallen down beside the bed where I cannot reach it. Don't stand there gaping, girl.
I'm sorry, sir. Here you are.
And how was it you did not hear the bell? Where have you been?
I was in the study, sir, taking your secretary a cup of tea.
And you stayed there, chattering to him, no doubt.
No, sir. Mr. Willoughby Smith was busy working. I wouldn't dream of disturbing him.
So you say, but I notice you spend too much time gossiping with that young man.
Well, sir, he always passes the time of day. He's very polite. He's a very nice gentleman.
No, that's true enough. He's certainly a vast improvement upon his predecessor. The last man was worse than useless. I had to send him packing.
Yes, sir, I remember.
When I found out he was delving into matters that did not concern him, I dismissed him out of hand. I ordered him to leave my house at once.
Please, sir, you mustn't upset yourself.
I will not allow anyone to poke and pry into my affairs. You understand? I will not allow it.
The Golden Pince-Nez by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, dramatised for radio by Peter Ling, with Clive Medicine as Sherlock Holmes and Michael Williams as Dr. John Watson, and featuring Maurice Denham as Professor Coram, Maureen O'Brien as the Strange Lady, and Andrew Wincott as Inspector Hopkins. The Golden Pince-Nez.
Did you speak, Watson?
No. My foot. It's gone to sleep. Hardly surprising, as it's nearly midnight.
Yeah, as late as that? I hadn't realised. I've been so engrossed in our work. What was it in the British Medical Journal that you found so absorbing?
Recent developments in kidney surgery.
Oh.
Yes, these new discoveries are always interesting.
No doubt, though ancient discoveries can be quite interesting too.
You should take care not to overstrain your eyes, peering through that magnifying glass. Must be a fascinating document.
I'm deciphering a medieval palimpsest. Yes, will you describe that as fascinating?
Oh, of course. A medieval what?
Palimpsest, a manuscript in which the original has been superimposed by more recent writing. Yes, I'm trying to uncover the buttery accounts from an obscure abbey during the second half of the 15th century. It's fascinating in its way, but... you're perfectly right. I think I've done enough for one evening.
Listen to that. The rain's worse than ever. It's been sweeping in on the east wind ever since this morning.
So now a cold, wet day has turned into a wild, tempestuous night. Well, we can think ourselves lucky to be indoors.
Hello. What's that?
It's a cab making its way from the direction of Oxford Street and stopping at the curb. I spoke too soon. The man's getting out and hurrying to our door.
What on earth can he want?
He wants us, and we, my poor Watson, will soon be wanting overcoats, scarves, and galoshes.
Surely he can't be expecting us to turn out at this time of night.
No, wait. The cab's setting off again. There's hope yet. He'd have told the driver to wait if he wanted us to go with him. Run down to the door, my dear fellow. Mrs. Hudson will have gone to her bed long ago.
Inspector Hopkins.
Is he in?
Who is it, Watson?
It's Inspector Hopkins. Do you realise it's almost midnight?
Yes, I know. I'm sorry to intrude on you so late.
What are you waiting for? Bring him upstairs.
After you, Inspector.
Come in, my dear sir, come in. I hope you've no designs upon us on such a night as this.
Forgive me, Mr. Holmes. I know I shouldn't trespass on your valuable time.
Oh, nonsense. Now, take off your coat and draw up a chair while I try to enliven the fire. Yes, I think with a little judicious attention I may encourage these embers into a blaze. Yes, that's more like it. Yes. And the doctor has a prescription containing hot water and a lemon, among other ingredients, which is an excellent preventative medicine. Doctor, if you'd be so kind.
I'm already preparing it, Holmes.
Oh,
It's very good of you, gentlemen, and I hesitate to trouble you with my problem.
it must be a serious problem indeed to have brought you out in this storm.
I've had a very full day, Mr. Holmes, and that's a fact. Did you see the item about the Yoxley case in the evening edition?
I'm afraid I've seen no news today later than the 15th century.
Well, it was only a paragraph, and most of it wrong at that. You didn't miss much.
Inspector, an infallible remedy to be taken before bedtime.
Oh, thank you, Doctor. Your very good health, gentlemen.
And yours, Inspector. And here's to a speedy solution to the problem, whatever it may be.
That's better.
Good.
Well, I haven't let the grass grow under my feet, I promise you that. The crime occurred at midday, a few minutes before noon. I was wired for at 3:15, reached Yoxley Old Place by 5, conducted my investigations, returned to Charing Cross in the last train, and here I am.
Yoxley Old Place. I don't recall the name.
It's a manor house down in Kent, 7 miles from Chatham, and not as near the railway station as I'd have liked.
You say a crime was committed, but you don't specify what type of crime.
Murder, Mr. Holmes. Plain and simple. Well, leastways, it's plain enough, but it's very far from simple. Here's a man dead. There's no denying that at any rate. But as far as I can see, there's no reason why anyone should wish him any harm. No motive, you see. None whatsoever.
Allow me to correct you. There's no motive that you've been able to discover as yet.
I suppose that's true. The fact is, I can't make head nor tail of it.
Perhaps if you were to begin with the facts.
Well, that won't be difficult. I got the facts clear enough. All I want now is to make sense of them.
Well, let's begin with the house. Yoxley Old Place. How old?
Very old. Originally built in the Middle Ages, I'd say. Tudor, or a bit earlier, maybe the 1400s.
Yes, strange how the 15th century seems to be pursuing me today.
But a remarkable old building, by the side of it.
No doubt of that. A rabbit warren of rooms, winding passages leading up and down, low ceilings and oak beams, very picturesque, unless you happen to be 6 foot tall.
Yes, I noticed the bruise when you walked in. And who lives in this picturesque rabbit warren?
Some years ago, the house was taken by an elderly gentleman, Professor Coram. He's an invalid, keeping to his bed most of the time. Otherwise, he's wheeled in a bath chair by Mortimer, the gardener.
What do his neighbours have to say of him? Is he popular?
The neighbours have really set eyes on him. He never goes beyond the garden gate. He has the reputation of being a learned man, but a bit of a recluse.
What other domestic staff does he have, apart from the gardener?
There are 2 servants living in the house. Mortimer has his own cottage at the far end of the garden. Mrs. Marker, the housekeeper, and a maid-of-all-work, Susan Tarleton.
Have these ladies been in his employ for long?
He engaged them when he first moved in. They're both women of excellent character. He hired a secretary at the same time. He's writing some learned historical book, and he needs an educated young man to assist him.
And who is this educated young man?
The professor hasn't been quite so fortunate in that respect. The first 2 he hired weren't successful, but the third, Mr. Willoughby Smith, was a young chap straight down from university, and he filled the bill perfectly. I spent some time on the telephone this evening, and I can tell you Smith was a decent, hard-working lad.
What?
Nobody ever had a bad word for him, from the time he was a schoolboy at Uppingham or a student at Cambridge. Yet he met his death this morning in the professor's study under circumstances which can only point to murder.
That is certainly very curious.
Do you think, Holmes, another log on the fire?
Yes, certainly. Now, to the murder itself. I am all attention, Inspector.
The principal source of my information is Susan Tarleton, since she discovered the body.
You say that the crime took place at midday. Where was Miss Tarleton at the time?
Just before noon, she was upstairs hanging some curtains which she'd ironed at one of the windows in the upper corridor. Professor Coram was in bed as usual. When the weather's bad, he seldom rises before lunch. And Mrs. Marker was busy in the kitchen. Willoughby Smith had been upstairs. He passed Susan Tarleton on his way down to the study on the ground floor. A minute or so later, she heard a dreadful cry from the room below. A wild scream, strange and unnatural. At the same instant, there was a heavy thud that seemed to shake the whole house. And then silence.
Girl must have been terrified.
I'm sure she was. So she pulled herself together and ran downstairs.
What's the matter? Are you all right? Oh, whatever's happened? Mr. Smith, can you hear me? Oh, if I could just get you to a chair.
Was that not? Heavens above!
Mrs. Marker, thank goodness. I'm trying to lift him.
Better not move him. I'll get some water.
There's a grap on the table. We must get the doctor to him.
I'll send Mortimer for Dr. Parsons. Here you are.
Try to lift your head, sir. Oh, Lord! Oh, he's bleeding. It's only a small wound, but it's gone so deep.
Oh.
There's blood pouring from his neck.
And look here. An open penknife lying on the carpet.
That's the one he uses for cutting string and chopping up sealing wax. Oh, if only he could tell us how it happened.
Try a few drops of water on his forehead.
He's opening his eyes. He's trying to say something.
Professor, it was she.
She what? Who? Oh, fetch a doctor. Oh, do hurry.
I'm afraid it's too late. I must go to the professor. He'll have to be told.
Mrs. Marker hurried to the professor's room and found him sitting up in bed, breathless and agitated. He had heard enough to realise that something terrible had happened.
Breathless? Would there have been time for him to return to his own room and get into bed?
He's an invalid. He can scarcely get around without his wheelchair.
I've known some ageing invalids who were not always as helpless as they seem to be.
In this case, Doctor, his disability is genuine enough. Mrs. Marker said he was still in his nightclothes. He can't even dress himself without Mortimer's help.
Those last words, the professor, it was she. They interest me very much. Did the housekeeper repeat them to Professor Coram?
He could make nothing of them. He says they must have been uttered in some sort of delirium. He insists that Smith hadn't an enemy in the world. The crime could have no possible motive.
So then what happened?
The women called Mortimer and sent him for the police, and in due course the chief constable sent for me. When I arrived, the officer on duty took me to the study, where I found the body lying in front of the bureau.
That's how he was, sir. Nothing's been touched.
And the stab wound?
On the right side of the neck, just below the jaw.
Severing the carotid artery. Yes, I see.
You don't suppose he could have done it himself, sir?
By the look of it, I'd say that was pretty well impossible. This blow was struck from the side and slightly behind. Hello? What's this? Clutched in his right hand.
Oh, we didn't touch that either, sir, seeing as it might be evidence. And he was hanging on to it like grim death. Begging your pardon, sir.
Let's take a look. After I'd examined it, I wrapped it carefully in tissue paper, Mr. Holmes, and here it is.
A golden pince-nez.
2 broken ends of black silk cord attached to it.
Did Willoughby Smith wear glasses?
No, Doctor, he had excellent sight. There can be no doubt that this was snatched from the face of the assassin.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I should like to try them on. Oh, yes, quite so. Now, the pen and paper, I think.
If we might return to the geography of the study. How many doors are there?
2. The first opens...
Aha! Of course.
I beg your pardon, Holmes? Are we interrupting you?
Oh, no. I'm just scribbling a few lines. Carry on, by all means. You won't disturb me in the least.
Well, if you're quite sure...
No.
You were saying, Inspector?
There are 2 doors in the study. The first opens onto a pair of narrow corridors, one leading to the back door and the garden, the other to the professor's bedroom.
And the second door?
That's the door into the entrance hall, the front door and the main staircase. But the intruder couldn't have come in that way.
Why not?
That hall and staircase were in Susan Tarleton's view all the time. So our murderer must have come along the garden path and entered the house that way.
The garden path? I imagine you examined it for footprints.
Yes, Doctor, and found nothing. That was when I realized I was dealing with someone cautious and cunning. Between the path and the long herbaceous border, there's a narrow strip of grass. There were no footprints on the path or the flower bed. The intruder had walked carefully along the grass in order to avoid leaving a trail.
So there were footprints on the grass?
Not prints exactly, but the grass had been trodden down. I questioned Mortimer. He hadn't been working in the garden yesterday on account of the bad weather.
Now, these tracks in the grass, were they coming or going?
Mr. Holmes, I thought you were busy writing.
It's not impossible to pay attention to 2 things at once. One Inspector, coming or going?
I couldn't tell. There were no clear outlines.
It's a large foot or a small one.
I couldn't even distinguish that.
Yes, well, never mind, can't be helped. At least we now know something about the lady we're seeking.
The lady?
Here you are, Watson. Perhaps you'd care to read this, the fruits of my labours.